At the bottom of the screen, you'll see our reading room, which is open on weekdays. Right now, we're open by appointment only for members because of the COVID-19 restrictions. We have many genealogical resources, some of which are not unique to our archive. You can see some of them listed here, including published family histories, vertical files, and family papers. The collections of the Society can be divided into 4 categories: manuscripts, vertical files, printed material, and visual materials. Our online catalog contains collection level and some item level descriptions for all our processed manuscripts. Larger collections also have finding aids attached to the online record that you can click on, and they will give you a detailed description of the contents, which are keyword searchable. Our vertical files contain information such as newspaper clippings and genealogical research notes on individuals and families. The South Carolina Historical Magazine was formerly known as the South Carolina Historical and Genealogical Magazine, and it's a good resource for research. It's now available through a website called JSTOR, and Virginia will talk about that a little later on. We also have Charleston city directories, and this is an example from a page in an 1852 directory, and they are often used by genealogical researchers. We also have genealogical charts or family trees, published family histories, and a series of books entitled Early South Carolina Newspapers, which index local news and advertisements in several 18th century South Carolina newspapers. We also have a large collection of photographs and prints, our visual materials collection. To give you an example, this photograph is an image of a young man from Charleston named Augustine Thomas Smythe. It was taken about 1863 while he was serving in the Confederate Signal Corps in Charleston. We have his correspondence and the family papers of the Smythe family, and his letters are some of the most interesting wartime correspondence in our collections. Young Smythe had a unique view of the war as he was stationed in the steeple of St. Michael's Church with a telescope as part of his duties of the Signal Corps. He had a bird's eye view of the shells coming into Charleston from the Federal artillery on Morris Island in the harbor, and his letters document the damage to the buildings and the human toll. As you may know, Charleston endured one of the longest bombardments in modern military history up to that time, and people are still finding shells and shell fragments in the city and elsewhere. Genealogical resources that you will find only with us may be of more interest to experienced researchers who have exhausted all other usual sources of information, and I'm going to talk about those now. Our collection include a number of records from Charleston law firms, some of which have proved to be invaluable sources of historical and genealogical information. I'm the processing archivist, and I have arranged and cataloged a number of extensive collections of legal records. One of our largest legal collections is the records of the Charleston law firm, ultimately known as Simmons, Siegling, and Kappelman. What you see here is the first page of a 53-page finding aid for that collection. Along with a few other law firm collections, it has yielded an impressive wealth of new resources for researchers. The bulk of the collection dates from the 1830s into the 1870s. And it consists of an immense amount of case records, correspondence, and other documents relating to the legal, financial, and personal affairs of hundreds of clients, mostly South Carolinians, and includes documents relating to numerous individuals and families, businesses, the phosphate industry, plantations, politics and government, churches, and slaves. Antebellum records in these legal collections are replete with documents relating to slaves and, to a lesser extent, free persons of color. Also of note in this collection is a small group of records pertaining to properties in Colleton County, significant because that county's records were burned in Columbia in 1865 during the war. The case records of the firm of Simmons, Siegling, and Kappelman contain numerous case records, and in these you will find genealogical data, especially in the records of lawsuits that deal with estates and wills. This is how one example is described in the finding aid for this collection. McNally versus Lynch case records, 1894 to 1896. Correspondence and legal documents, including depositions, answers, decrees, and a master's report in a lawsuit concerning the estate of Joshua Smith of Baltimore, Maryland. And the papers include much genealogical information. Joshua Smith was the husband of Harriet Stevenson, and he died intestate in New York City in 1868. He owned property in Charleston, South Carolina, and other family names mentioned in the papers include Burdick, Hill, Craig, and McEwen. The letter that you see on the screen from this collection relates to this case and is a letter from one law firm to another. In these same records, I found this, a little family chart giving information on Joshua Smith and his heirs. The attorneys often had to conduct their own genealogical research in order to determine who the heirs were to an estate so that they could find them. Another example from this collection would be the Ashe family legal papers dating from 1836 to 1859. These are mostly legal documents and estate records pertaining to the trust estate of Miss Harriet Ann Ashe. She died in 1857 and was the heir of John Ashe, a planter who lived in the Adams Run area and died in the 1820s. The papers includes the records of a lawsuit concerning the estate, the will of John Ashe, trust estate accounts, genealogical information on the Ashe family and related families of Livingston, Gadsden, and Hazel, related correspondence, and a list of slaves owned by Colonel John Algernon Sidney Ashe. The document you see here is a memorandum written by the attorney James Simmons, who often had terrible handwriting. This particular memo was written on one of his better days and gives genealogical information on the Ashe and Livingston families and other interested parties in the lawsuit. This more legible document, written by another attorney, is a record of the, quote, family of the testator John Ashe living at the time of his death, unquote. This huge legal collection also includes the personal papers of the law firm partners, one of whom, James Ancrum Simmons, got into trouble with the law. His case presents an interesting genealogical twist in terms of family names. An article that appeared in a South Carolina newspaper in late 1895 said that James Ancrum Simmons had been indicted on a charge of breach of trust with fraudulent intent. In 1896, Simmons left Charleston and took up residence in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where he practiced law there under the name of James Ballantyne until his death. His wife, Helen Toomer Jennings Simmons, and most of his children joined him in Sioux Falls in 1897, and Mrs. Simmons took the name Helen Jennings Ballantyne. She died in Oakland, California in 1941 and was buried in Tacoma, Washington. One of her sons was William Washington Ballantyne, who died in 1951. James Ancrum Simmons is buried in Sioux Falls as James Ballantyne. The document that you see is a sworn statement made by his wife after his death. His estate was handled by his friends and attorneys in Charleston, and in order to settle his estate, his real identity had to be established. Just last month, we were contacted by Mr. Ballantyne, who lives in California, and he says he is a descendant of James Ancrum Simmons. He had come across our records while searching on the internet, and he was requesting copies of them so that he could solve his family mystery. He was very excited to have found the answers to some of his genealogical questions. Unfortunately, a significant portion of South Carolina private and public records have been lost over the centuries due to natural disasters, environmental causes, human neglect, and war. In February and March of 1865, the army of General William T. Sherman went on a destructive march through the state. His soldiers not only pillaged and destroyed farms, houses, and public buildings, but also wiped out countless irreplaceable public and historical records. An example of this loss is documented in a letter of January 6, 1866, from William F. Desessor, a Columbia attorney, who reported to Charleston attorney James Simmons Sr., quote, "I grieve to say that the archives of the Cincinnati Society, lodged in the strong room with my valuables, were destroyed by the fire which consumed my house on the 17th of February, 1865. It will be an additional satisfaction to General Sherman to know that he has destroyed these sacred relics," unquote. The papers which were destroyed were the records of the South Carolina Society of the Cincinnati, which was the state chapter of an American military, patriotic, and hereditary social organization formed in 1783 in New York by commissioned officers of the Continental Army, and George Washington was its first president. The constituent society in South Carolina was organized that same year. The South Carolina Society of the Cincinnati gave us its records a decade ago, and very few of them predate 1866. The courthouses in Orangeburg and other counties were burned by Sherman's troops. This drawing of the Orangeburg courthouse was made by Union war correspondents traveling with the Federal Army on the first day of the occupation of the town. By the time the Army left Orangeburg a day or two later, the courthouse had been destroyed also. The legal records and many other manuscript collections in the South Carolina Historical Society sometimes includes documents for which no original now exists. I'm always especially interested in our antebellum records relating to what are called the burnt counties. Colleton County near Charleston, for instance, sent its court records to Columbia in 1865, where they were burned by Sherman's troops. A few years ago, we received a donation of the papers of Joseph D. Taylor, a Colleton County surveyor of the 19th and early 20th century, and in it, there are copies of land records that may be useful to researchers, copies of deeds and plats that were filed at the County Register of Mean Conveyance and later destroyed in 1865. The document you see here is a plat of 900 acres laid out to James Bunch in St. Paul's Parish on the south side of the Stono Swamp, 1841. Because we are located in Charleston, our collections are strongest in low country materials, but our scope is statewide, and we have manuscripts relating to nearly every part of South Carolina. We are privileged to hold the records of the Protestant Episcopal Church in the Diocese of South Carolina, which date from 1706 up into the 1970s. These records include parish registers of births, burials, and marriages from many churches in the lower part of the state. We also have the records of the Second Presbyterian Church, the Circular Congregational Church, and the Unitarian Church, all in Charleston. Examples of church records in other parts of the state we have include the records of the Church of the Redeemer in Orangeburg and the St. Matthew's Parish Church. Some of the parish registers in this large collections have been published, others have not. These church records are, of course, useful for genealogical research. The document that you see here is a page from the private register of Reverend Paul Trapier, who was the rector at St. Michael's Episcopal Church in Charleston, and who also ministered at other churches. His private register dates from 1830 to 1864. It's open to one of the first pages, which is a record of baptisms. The Historical Society also has something to offer researchers looking for early African American genealogy. This book, Slave Records at the South Carolina Historical Society, is a quick reference guide to numerous manuscript collections containing records relating to slaves, including plantation journals and rolls, bills of sale, and estate records. It was published in 2005 and is somewhat out of date since we have added so many records to our collection since then, but it can still be very useful. Information on freedmen can also be found in our manuscript collection. as well as in the Freedmen's bank records that we have on CD-ROM. And other resources include the Charleston City Directories and capitation tax records, which pertain to free persons of color. And by the way, we are trying to raise funds to digitize our slave records at this time. The Register of Paul Trapier, which I showed you earlier, has many entries relating to slaves as well as free persons of color. The page you see here is a record of slave marriages in 1853. The first entry records the marriage of London, a, quote, servant of Mr. Roger Pinckney, unquote, to Henny, a servant of Mr. Alexander. As I said earlier, the genealogical resources that you will find only at the Historical Society may be of more interest to experienced researchers who have exhausted all other avenues of research. If you visit our library, our friendly and knowledgeable staff will be happy to assist you in finding these resources. We can't guarantee that you'll find the information you're looking for, but our wonderful collections are certainly worth your time and effort. Over the years, we have had many researchers visit us doing genealogical investigations, and many continue to come to our archive for that purpose. Our research library normally is open free of charge, but due to COVID restrictions right now, we are only open to members. So I encourage you to consider membership in the Society to help support our important mission of preserving our state's documentary history and the history of our families. And now I'm going to turn it over to Virginia Ellison so she can give you a little more information about membership and its benefits. Thank you. What?
Thank you, Karen. So on this page, it goes over the benefits of membership to the South Carolina Historical Society, access to the Care Log, our general interest South Carolina magazine, and the South Carolina Historical magazine. And one of those benefits is online access to back issues of the South Carolina Historical Society publications. If you'll change the slide. So one of the things that really benefits genealogists is access to the past issues. As Karen mentioned, that up to 2016 of the South Carolina Historical magazine is available on the database JSTOR. Your local library may have a subscription to JSTOR, or you're welcome to join and use these materials. You saw on an earlier slide that there's transcriptions of parish registers, church registers, Jacob Shermer's diary, where he recorded a lot of the births and deaths and marriages in Charleston, and other transcribed material. And this is a wonderful, wonderful resource for genealogists. Other benefits are discounts for research and reproduction services. So we get about 2,500 emails a year, if not more, from genealogists doing reference inquiries. And we can give about 20 to 30 minutes, if that, of a courtesy check to see if we can find the answer easily within our collection. And as you know, 9 times out of 10, we are not able to do that. So we either have to refer you to our research services or maybe an independent researcher for hire in South Carolina if we think that our collection might not be the best bang for your buck. And on the next slide, you'll see our email address. I didn't color that very well. library@schsonline.org. That is the best way to contact us, especially right now, since we're practicing social distancing, and many of us are not sitting at our desks and near our phone all the time. But this email address goes to the entire library staff, and we, will claim your inquiry and get back to you. And a lot of times we'll talk amongst ourselves, like the best research method, or find the best collection for your needs. So we have about 15 minutes for questions, if you have any, if there's anything we didn't touch on today in this very brief introduction to our collections. It's a lot to pack into 30 minutes, but please feel free to ask any questions. You can raise your hand with the little icon. You can type it into the chat, and I'm monitoring the chat. Or you can literally raise your hand if your video's on and unmute yourself. So Ms. McSween is interested in finding the earliest Crown grants of land.
Mute. Okay, a lot of the earliest land grants have been published, and we have those books at the Society. We also have the proprietary records. Those are the very earliest records, but most of that has been published, so it shouldn't be too hard to find those. And sometimes it's just an abstract of the grant. It's not the full document. To go and see the actual document, you would probably have to go to the South Carolina Department of Archives and History in Columbia, but like I said, most of those have been published, and you can find those pretty easily.
Can I communicate with you right now?
Virginia, is it okay if Daryl asks a question?
Did you hear, Faye? Yeah, go ahead.
This
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Daryl McCormick. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in Florida. I don't have access to the archives very conveniently. And I'm curious about how to get access to what you have without going 50 miles to the closest library, which I guess is what you're saying. I can get JSTOR there. I mean, is there any way on the internet for the average human being to get access to some of these things?
Well, if you are a member of the Society, then you have access to JSTOR through us.
Okay.
And that has the published issues of all our South Carolina Historical magazine that have been put online. They're not fully up to date, not up to this year, but most of them up to a few years past have been put online. And most of the genealogical information in our magazine was published in the earlier part of the 20th century up until about 1960, and that's when it was called the South Carolina Historical and Genealogical Magazine. Now it's known as the South Carolina Historical Magazine. But if you want to see what's in there, if you find something online that's in there, you can access JSTOR through your computer if you're a member. And JSTOR is available through a lot of public libraries and academic libraries also.
Okay, just to follow up, I am a member. So you're suggesting that I just need to figure out how to access this on my internet?
Can you tell him, Virginia?
And Daryl, that is just for the published materials. If you want materials on a particular, that's in a particular manuscript collection, unfortunately, not everything has been digitized. So it's really either going to take a visit by you or by a genealogist that you hire, or you can ask us to search something for you for a fee.
Okay.
So yeah, I wish I could tell you everything had been digitized, but that's an extremely expensive and time-consuming process, and we're getting there as fast as we can.
We do have a researcher on staff that will do research, and members get a discount on that, on the fees that's involved in that. And we can research different general interest subjects or genealogical questions. So.
Okay, one more little follow-up. I hope it'll be brief. So if I get out there on JSTOR, and so the magazine will be accessible, is there an index that says all these things are accessible? So it would show anything else that might be accessible?
Well, if you go to our website and under archives, you can see what digitized materials we have that you can actually see online. It's not a lot, but you can see it through our website, yes.
Okay, and then can I always just send an email to somebody and inquire a little bit further about it if?
Sure, sure, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
good. That's all I need. Thank you.
Mhm. Was there another question? Virginia?
Bill Bust is interested in determining which homes in Charleston my ancestors lived in. So what you could do is look through the Charleston city directories or email us the dates that they lived in Charleston, and we can look through the city directories. As I said, we do a courtesy check of up to 30 minutes. We can't do more than that just because of the sheer volume of inquiries we receive. But we're happy to flip through the city directories and see if we can find a quick answer for you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I live in Pennsylvania, so I'm also out of state and unable to travel. I have been to South Carolina doing a little research, but I need help in contacting a church for some information about a couple of my ancestors in Sumter, South Carolina. Would you be able to help me with that if I send you the name of the church, etc.?
Yes, ma'am. Point you in the right direction. I know that there's a wonderful archive in Sumter County, and they may have some more local resources.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's part of our job as a librarian. We like to put people in the right direction of the information they're seeking.
Is there a particular person I should address my question to then?
Nope, just library at SCHSonline.org.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Cecilia,
Hello?
can you unmute yourself?
Okay, hello?
Oh, Glendale, is that you?
Yes, yes,
Hi.
it's Grendel.
Sorry.
Hi. I'm just kind of starting out. And so I was aware about the Gaddison's Wharf in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
That is possible that a lot of slaves came in from that location, but then they was dispersed out. So my ancestors, they ended up in Bullock County, Georgia, which is more inland from Savannah. So I don't know if I should be connected to some type of historical society in Georgia, or should I start out in Charleston as far as trying to trace, the path of my ancestors. So that's kind of like my question. It's conflicting. Like, where do I start out when I know most likely they came in to the Charleston location?
Well, it's possible they came in through Savannah also.
Oh, really? Savannah? Okay.
Possibly. I'm not an expert on that, but Savannah would be, the major port there. But if they did come in through Charleston, we don't have a lot of the records of the ships or the manifests of the ships or things like that. That just doesn't exist. What you have to do is work your way backwards and start with the things that you know for sure, and
Right.
go as far back as you can, and try
Right.
to determine what plantation they were on and who owned it, and sort of like try to find out their earliest place of residence. And sometimes you can't go any further than that, but sometimes you can. It's just,
Yeah.
it's difficult.
So it would be best to start through Savannah then.
Actually, you have to work your way back. I mean, you have to go.
Right. On what I know for sure.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think Georgia has those sort of records either, but I'm not that knowledgeable about the Georgia Historical Society. You could check their website and check with them and see if they have any information on that, but doing that sort of genealogy is very challenging.
Yeah, well, I know. All right. Thank
So I
you.
also put in the chat, you may want to look at lowcountryafricana.com or the International African American Museum Center for Family History. They have some wonderful research tips, and they've kind of combined a lot of online resources to make them more easily accessible.
What was that? Low Country what?
I put it in the chat, lowcountryafricana.com,
Okay. Okay.
as
Okay.
well as the IAM Center for Family History.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
This is Cecilia. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my connection, I've lost the connection, but I'm on phone, not my computer, for voice. The South Carolina room in Greenville, I believe, how does that, my sister has been there. I have been to your library. My sister's been to the Carolina room in Greenville. How does the information that they have over there compare to what you have?
I'm not familiar with the Carolina room at the Greenville County Library, but the Historical Society is the largest and oldest private manuscript collection in South Carolina. And we hold, I mean, thousands of ready reference published materials, you know, family histories, you know, marriage records, death records, things that are published in addition to our manuscript collection. I can't imagine that the Carolina room there has a manuscript collection as large as ours. And one of the strengths of our collection is the genealogical research records. You know, Karen pointed out earlier that we have Agnes Baldwin papers, Mabel Weber, and several other genealogists who just did extensive research on many South Carolina families. So they're always a wonderful place to start.
Okay. Well, I will be sending you, I'll send y'all an email. But another quick question was too, with the newspapers.com that I pay for, how do your records compare to that? Like, am I wasting my money with them?
No, no, you're not. We have newspapers on microfilm, the South Carolina Gazette, the News and Courier, and several other South Carolina newspapers. But I mean, we do not actively collect newspaper original because number one, they don't last. They're hard for an archive to keep due to the acidity of the paper. And number two, there's so many other places that have them and digitized now so that it's keyword searchable. So I think newspapers.com is a great resource. Your local library probably has a subscription to some of the like early American newspaper databases. And then USC also has a newspaper digitization project going on where they're doing digitizing a lot of the smaller, more local newspapers in South Carolina.
And who was that again? UHC?
University of South Carolina. I'll pull up the link and add it to the chat.
Okay. Well, I can't. I don't know what my connection went. It says Zoom is not responding. So I've lost the
If you
connection.
Google University of South Carolina newspaper digitization, then that link will come up.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
So do you have many records in your collection from the Dutch Fork area? We have some. We've got quite a bit of published material from that area, some genealogical records, things like that. If you give us a name, we can definitely look through our catalog and see what we have and get back to you. Is there a comprehensive index to the South Carolina Historical and Genealogical magazines? So yes, we do have the physical index here in the library. If you're searching through the database JSTOR, you can search by date and year, also by keyword and author. So online, it can be a little more tricky than to go to the physical index, you know, and look up Stone or Benjamin Stone and see if there's anything in there for him. But it's definitely doable. And I do have some step-by-step directions that I'm happy to send anyone on how to navigate JSTOR.
I would like that. Do I just need to send you an email?
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Question.
Go ahead.
JSTOR, can you explain JSTOR again? Like, would that be helpful to me or no? I was the one that was starting out from like the very beginning.
I don't think it would be helpful for you yet.
Okay.
It may be helpful to you eventually.
In the future. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any information on the ships that came to Charleston in the 1770s from Ireland? We do have some published materials about naturalization of the Scotch-Irish. Unfortunately, ships records are pretty spotty. Brent Holcomb, who has transcribed a lot of South Carolina records, wrote a brief article about how spotty the ship's records are. So we can definitely look through some of those published materials, but I can't guarantee that what you're looking for is there. A lot of the time, the records were kept in the departure where the ship departed from. So they may be in the British Public Records Office or in Ireland or Scotland. So Mary Beth is asking, I wonder if there are any 17th or 18th century Episcopal Church records that have not been published. Absolutely. That collection that Karen mentioned earlier, the records of the Protestant Episcopal Church in the Diocese of South Carolina, it's a mouthful. Yes, that collection's about, I want to say 80 to 90 boxes. So there's quite a bit of material in there that has not been digitized or published. And I know they mentioned this earlier, but less than 1% of our collection is digitized. We grow faster than we can keep our digitization. We also have a digitization project, but we just grow so much faster. And our material is available on the Low Country Digital Library, which feeds into the South Carolina Digital Library, which feeds into the Digital Public Library of America. And I can add that link to the chat too. So, Bill Amick asked about our vertical files. So they are family files. The biographical files will show up in a catalog search, and it'll say that it's a vertical file or a miscellaneous research file. If you did a search for Smythe family, you'll see that we have several vertical files on Smythe family. I mean, and those are obituaries, research notes, articles, and sometimes other researchers' genealogical notes as well. So those are a wonderful resource. We do have architectural vertical files as well as subject vertical files, and those are available in the online catalog. So if you were researching 19 Pitt Street in downtown Charleston, you would call and say, hey, do you have a vertical file on this property? And sometimes there's information on who lived there.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
How do you rate Ancestry.com? Like, is that a good search engine or, you know?
I think it's a good tool, absolutely.
Okay.
But it's up to you to find the source of your material to ensure that it's correct. I mean, it's absolutely a great tool and it connects you with others. But I think you do have to vet the information. And someone else may have something to add on that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So a flash drive sold by the South Carolina Genealogical Society containing the Carolina Herald. Is this mutually exclusive to the data found via JSTOR? I'm not familiar with that flash drive, so I can't answer that question. And Ms. McCreary asked about the Calverts in Prince William County. Do we have a book or records in our collection that could help? And we could check our catalog, which I added the link earlier. And as I said, I would do a search for Calvert family to see what we have. And I can do that real quickly. So it looks like we do have a file on the Calvert family, and there's some other associated books. I'll add the link there. So if you click on that link, you'll see I just did a search for Calvert family. And of course, we don't know if it's your Calvert family until we go pull the materials and look through them. So Cecilia asked, off the top of your head, do you have much for St. Peter's Parish in Hampton County during early to middle 1800s? Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. I know that I was doing some research on St. Peter's Parish the other day in Hampton County, and we do have some materials from that area. So any Charleston cemetery listings that cannot be found on Find a Grave or the Catholic Diocese? Yes, we have the WPA cemetery records for South Carolina and specifically Charleston. So we can always quickly go look through that and see if there is a listing. You know, they did make mistakes, just like the census takers did. And sometimes the marker may not exist anymore because that was done in the 30s. So feel free to email us. Give us 2 or 3 business days to get back to you. Due to lockdown and COVID-19, there are a lot of people doing their genealogy right now, which has been really great for us, but we are moving a little more slowly than we used to, just due to limited access and rotating schedules, social distancing. But please, we will get back to you. Just take us a couple days, because sometimes we also have to look up and do a little research on your research before we properly answer it or point you in the right direction.
Thanks to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Karen and Virginia, for your help. I hope you all will tune into other seminars and forums that we have throughout the year. I'm always very, even having worked here 15 years, I'm amazed at the depth and the vastness of this collection and what's in it. I'm always so very, very proud of how helpful the staff is. I get so many nice compliments about them. So thank you again. Have a good afternoon, and let us know if you have any questions. You all have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.